Welcome to our next section, which is going to be about data integration. We'll start by talking about the Azure Data Platform end to end. Then we're going to discuss use cases and architecture components for data integration. From there, we're going to recommend a solution for data integration. And we're also going to talk about Data Factory and their key concepts. We'll move forward with creating a self-hosted integration runtime inside of Data Factory. And finally, we'll move to our section summary. So let's go ahead and get started with our first lesson, which is Azure Data Platform end to end. No matter what business that you're in, you will always have data. Data will always be gathered and processed based on all the applications that are getting used inside of your enterprise. Out of all the data that gets collected, there is what's known as useful data and unuseful data. Useful data is for things like anticipating needs, mitigating risk, recognizing technology or industry trends, understanding its customers, and optimizing any service that you're using. It's also important to note that useful data is only useful depending on the type of people that are going to be analyzing it and their department. The question becomes, how can you take data, review it, and somehow turn it into useful data, which then can be used by a team of analysts or a department in order for them to review that useful data and come up with a relevant report to them. Let's take a look at the technology that's required in order to make this happen. First of all, you have a data source that is going to have that data that you're going to grab into useful data. Secondly, you need to take that useful data and you also need to store it in some way, shape, or form so that it can be used by analytics. The process of taking data from the data source, converting data into useful data, and finally moving it to the data source, this is ETL process, or extract, transform, load process. This was the most logical sense that you could create in order to transform data into useful data, primarily because data sources could not be very large. One of the main issues with ETL process is the amount of time it's going to consistently take in order to transform data into useful data before it is available to be loaded into analytics. So while it is useful data, it might not be the fastest method of getting to the data as possible. Business decisions require speed. And in order to get speedy decisions, you have to have speedy access to data at all times. Thankfully, because of cloud computing like Azure, our data sources can be infinitely larger and store a lot more data than anything that we could handle on premises. And because of that, we can actually move that process forward, where we can have the extract process be immediately placed into a data source that is large enough in order to handle all of the data that we need, and we can transform it after it reaches that data source, which makes it quicker to be able to access and transform for analytics. This is also known as an extract load transform process, or ELT, instead of ETL. In order to make it more simplified, we can use SQL Server as our main data source and extract and load into a data lake. Therefore, we can transform all of that useful data into analytics. There has been a lot of need in order to add in analytics or the ability to view that data and find industry trends even before that happens to have speedier results. You can have stream ingestion before it even reaches the data source. You can have analytics on the data source, or you can have data visualization after it's been transformed.